Okay, today we're going to talk a little bit about lathe tools. Unlike most the parts of woodworking, the tools in wood turning are much more critical. In woodworking in general, you can generally accomplish the same task with a number of different tools. In wood turning, not so much. In wood turning, each tool has a specific purpose, and it's best to use the correct tool for the correct purpose. For instance, you would never put a spindle gouge inside a bowl. That's why you have a bowl gouge. So it's important that you use the right tool for the right process that you're trying to accomplish. So we're going to talk in great detail on this video about each individual tool, what they're called, and what they do. And we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, this is the box that your tools will come in. Each of you will be issued one of these boxes of tools. It's important that we keep them in good shape. These tools have been in use for 8 years. This will be the 9th year that we've actually used them. So the students who came before you have taken care of the tools so that you have a good set of tools to work with this semester. So we're going to make sure that we leave these tools in good shape for the students that will come after you. Now, inside the box there are 6 tools. Each has a specific name, and it's important that you know the name of those tools. The largest one is called a roughing spindle gouge. Now, this tool is used for precisely the purpose that you would assume it does. This does the roughing. This is the tool that you would use to turn square stock round on the lathe, generally between centers. But it's generally the tool that you're going to use when you start it with a square piece of wood that you need to turn round. It has a large flute down the center, and it has a bevel. Now, the bevel on a lathe tool is that portion of the tool that comes in contact with the grinding wheel when you sharpen it. So this is where you would actually sharpen the tool, and this is called the bevel, and this is called the flute. Now, and that's the spindle roughing gouge. Now, the next one is called a skew. Now, the skew is probably the most difficult tool in the box to learn how to use. We will use it, but we won't use it extensively. It's just not a part of a beginning class to go into great detail on how to use the skew. But you will use it several times in the projects that we'll do. Now, the skew has a double bevel. There's a bevel on this side and an opposite bevel on this side. It's also cut at an angle. And it's very, very sharp. This one, when it's sharpened correctly, has a razor edge. You can shave with it. And this is used to smooth a cylinder. It's also used to cut grooves. The parts of the skew are the long point. The pointy one is the long point. The other is the short point. And it has a bevel on both sides. And the angle that it's ground this way is called the skew angle. This particular one is not rectangular. This one is oval. The body is oval, and the reason for that is when it's sitting on the tool rest, you can change the angle while you're still in contact with the tool rest. And that's the rationale behind the oval shape. They also make skews that are rectangular, that don't have this oval cut into the sides. There are also skews that this portion is not cut straight. It's cut in an arc. So it's a rounded surface rather than a flat one. So there's a number of different ways that you can configure a skew. But that is the one that we have in the kit, and that's the Skew. Now the next one is the round nose scraper. Now this one has a bevel, but this tool is used flat. It's not used at an angle. So the cutting surface is right on the top. And this is the only tool in your kit that does not cut. The round nose scraper does exactly what its name implies. This tool scrapes. It scrapes the wood off as it's coming around across this flat surface. It's used for hollowing. It's used for coves. And again, we'll get into great detail once we start actually doing the projects. But this is a round nose scraper, and the important thing about it is it's the only tool in the box that does not cut. Now the next tool is called a parting tool. Now the parting tool does exactly what the name implies. If you need to separate two parts or cut a finished piece off the waste block on the end, you would use a parting cut with the parting tool. Now the parting tool comes to a point this way. It also has a bevel, but this tool is designed to sit on the small side of the rectangle. And the parting tool goes into the wood, and it cuts a groove in the wood, the width of the tool itself. And it has other uses. You can use this to flatten work. You can use this to cut recesses and tenons on your piece, and we'll get into those in more detail in another video. But the parting tool is generally used to part a piece off the lathe. Now the next one is a spindle gouge. Now the two gouges that you have look very, very similar to one another. One is simply larger than the other. There's a couple of other differences. But the spindle gouge has a fairly shallow flute compared to the bowl gouge. But it does have a flute up the center, and it has the bevel cut on the back side. And of course, remember, the bevel is that portion of the tool that comes in contact with the grinding wheel when you sharpen it. And is generally smaller in diameter. And a spindle gouge is used to cut details into a spindle. And again, there'll be a lot more detail in other videos. But this is your spindle gouge. Now the last tool is the one that you will use the most, and this is your bowl gouge. Now the bowl gouge is bigger in diameter. The flute is deeper than the spindle gouge by quite a bit. And again, it has the bevel on the outside. And this is used to shape the inside and the outside of bowls. But it's also used to do shaping work on spindles. When you're cutting beads and coves, a lot of times it's the bowl gouge that you're using. And that concludes a description of each one of the tools. And I'll emphasize again, it's important that you know what to call it. If I tell you that you need to use a a spindle gouge on a particular portion of a project, you need to know which tool to go to your kit and get. And this is your spindle gouge. But we'll go through them one more time. This is the spindle roughing gouge. This is your skew chisel. This is your round nose scraper. And this is your parting tool. This is your spindle gouge and your bowl gouge. It's going to be to your advantage to learn the names of these tools and to be able to recognize them on site, because I will only call them by that name. And that concludes the information I have for you on the individual tools. The next step in the tools themselves is going to be to learn how to sharpen them. And that will be covered in great detail in another video. So that's all we have on the tools themselves and what they're called. And I will see you another day on another video.